You're live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the February 9th meeting of the Grosse Ile Township Public Services Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
To the flag
United States of
of the United States
America,
of America.
and to the republic which it stands,
For which it stands,
one nation, under
one
God,
nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for
liberty and
all.
justice for all.
All.
All right, so we're going to see who's here. So number one, Costick's here. Kennedy's here.
Here,
Les Schmidtke. Les? John Reilly.
Yes. John Reilly's here.
Lenny,
Present.
you're here?
Yes, sir.
Good. Hi, Lenny.
How are you?
Good. David, Nadeau,
Here.
and Laura Siraki. Laura? All right, so we'll excuse Laura. Last I knew, she may join us. She was out of state. So anyways, this is awkward, but we'll get through it.
And Dave Nadau's there, right?
I am.
Yes. Okay, good.
I called Dave's name. Okay.
Yeah.
I called Dave. Les, are you with us yet? John, he may need help.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll just leave my line open and I'll use another phone to call him up.
Okay.
He was dialing in on 7438. That's the number he was dialing in on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll call him from a hardware phone. So just keep going now. Okay.
Sure.
And I approve the agenda with everybody else. Okay. This will take me a while. I'll just leave the phone open. I'll let you know if I get to him. Okay.
So,
All right. All right.
item number
Keep
4
going.
on our, thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. And if there are no comments, we'll approve the agenda. All yeas to approve?
Under motion.
Yay.
Aye.
We need a motion. We'll take a motion. to
Motion. Motion, Pusdesris.
Support
Okay.
Kennedy.
approve. David, you're saying yes, right? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Next are the minutes of our November 20th meeting. I'll make the motion to approve. Is there any discussion? Is there support?
Support Kennedy.
Kennedy? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
David's abstaining because he wasn't at the meeting, or he wasn't a member yet of the commission. Right, Dave?
Correct.
Next, we have item 6 is approval of the vouchers. Only 2 pages of vouchers. You've had a chance to look at it. I'll make the motion to approve. Is there support?
Support
Who is that?
Dave.
Dave? Any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none, is there a question?
I said no, sir.
Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anybody against? Motion carried. All right, so I think John's making progress. Item 7 is a statement of revenues and expenditures. Unless there's any questions, we'll just file those. And then item 8 is approval of the treasurer's report. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there support?
Support,
Kennedy.
Pusdesris.
Pedestris supported. Any questions on the treasurer's report? If none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. So I
Hey,
don't
Bill,
know-
I called Les's phone number on his cell phone and I just left a message that he wasn't signed in.
Okay,
I don't know what else to do. That's the only thing I can think of.
all right.
All right. He was trying to call in on the hardware. So I called his cell phone number and voicemail kicked in. So I left that message.
All right,
So
all
that's where we are right now. Okay.
right. Well, we do have a quorum, and I appreciate you trying, John. So see what happens.
Okay. I don't know what it was. Oh, and I left the information on how to unmute. So I left that on his voicemail.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think there's any public on this meeting. If there is, speak up. Nobody is, so we'll move on to item 10, action items. The first is a big one, and that item is our budget. And I'm going to let Derek take over and start to run through it, and we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible.
I trust everybody has had the opportunity to review the budget summary sheet as well as the detailed budget information that followed. The budget summary sheet is something similar to what I put together last year. It really highlights the differences in this year's budget as compared to last year's budget. And it highlights also some of the capital work that we're planning on doing within this year's budget and, some major changes, as I had mentioned previously. The budget that was submitted to you tonight, it is unbalanced in most of the categories. And part of that is just because we're pretty early on in the budget process. The way our meeting fell in the beginning of February, we've just kind of started the budget process. So there are some things that are kind of up in the air where I'm uncomfortable saying what the reliance is going to be on fund balance in a lot of these different accounts, just simply because I've still got a fair number of outstanding invoices we need to account for before I know what that total is going to be. And I'll go into that as we go through the budget presentation. But for example, our work over at the wastewater treatment plant, we just had invoices come in last week for over $150,000. I have allocated basically the full weight of that work into next fiscal year because we were unaware of when exactly those invoices were going to come in. So in order to be accurate with the fund balance reliance, would be very difficult at this point. So, we'll look at those things as we go through the presentation, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So when you looked at it, that's why you saw maybe an unbalanced, account or two when you went through the detail. So what I'd like to start with is our drainage account. As in last year, I included community development, but I know DPS doesn't normally deal with community development, but for the sake of putting all of our information together for subsequent conversations with the township board and whatnot, I included it in the summary. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but I know DPS hasn't typically dealt with community development. So, I'll skip over that and start with drainage if there aren't exceptions to that or any concerns with doing that. So what I'm looking at is page 25, just for reference, drainage. The first item on the budget summary report under drainage is a project carryover from last fiscal year, and that is an allocation for the Park Lane drainage project, which wasn't completed last year, but we had an earmark set in there for that. Bill and I have had the opportunity to talk a little bit about this, and I'll defer to him. I know he had some concerns about listing the Park Lane drainage project in next year's budget. So, Bill, if you'd kind of weigh in on that.
Well, we met yesterday and went over several budget items. I will not vote for the Park Lane project right now. So I suggested to him that he revise this so that when it goes to the township board, it's okay to show a major project, but I don't want to budget it so that people could say it's budgeted. So therefore you should do it. It's a lot of money. It's not been engineered. I know some engineering work has allegedly been started on it, and that I want to talk about too. I think the most we should do, Derek, I saw Sohail's report. Sohail's report at the end of the agenda says that work's going on for the design. The only design that should take place on that, now that the survey work's done, the topo work's done, I believe is just some preliminary engineering conceptually, but not any detail, because I'm not ready to take on a $350,000 project there. If the water levels are going to fall, this could be something that's not a high priority the next year or two for us. So personally, I'm not ready to vote for that. And I'm fearful that if we show it that it's budgeted, somebody's gonna throw that up in our face.
So I think
I don't know what other people think.
Bill's suggestion was just to put a default statement on there with a dollar figure, large drainage project.
Large drainage project,
Right.
and not show it to be one or the other. We don't know what's gonna come up, but be interested in.
Well, the other thing is that at the midway through the next fiscal year, that's what you're talking about. And then at the end of the fiscal year, there's always amendments and budget amendments and stuff like that. So I don't think anything has to be done tonight, one way or the other. Just what Bill said, just leave it.
Okay, good. Glad you feel, I know you've been
Without a
involved.
specific amount, or a low amount, whatever you want to do. But it doesn't matter, because eventually, if it was a go on a project, then you'd have some better actuals, and then you'd be able to say yes or no or whatever.
John, I like what you said. Maybe we could just show it as reserved for large drain projects, period.
Whatever you want to.
You have the flexibility there. But Phil's been up there. I'm interested in what Phil would think of this.
Well, I'm just wondering, should we possibly budget a certain amount for just preliminary design consideration? In other words, have a fixed amount in there for that in the budget.
You could do that.
And leave the total amount out. And that way we won't have committed to make a decision on it one way or another, but we will have at least budgeted some money for evaluation and very preliminary type design.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
What would you suggest, Eric?
I'm fine with that too. I mean, we would just scrub the 350 out of the line item, and then we would allocate some additional funds towards engineering. I guess my question, and I know Sohail's on the line, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have an idea for what the engineering level that Phil is talking about, what a proper number would be to list in that budget? And if you're not comfortable saying what that might be, we can talk, offline here about what that might be, and I can just incorporate it into the budget. So.
That sounds good. Yes, I cannot determine at this point what preliminary engineering will be. We can do it on an hourly basis, not to exceed a certain number, but I have to figure that number out.
Okay, so let's do that. If there is an opposition, I don't have any issue with that at all.
So I'm thinking in the range of 20, 30,000 period, not any more than.
Put that down. Put that down, 20 or 30, yeah.
My suggestion
And then you
is
modify that, yep.
my suggestion is not to exceed $25,000.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
That's good.
Thank you. And so we won't show Park Lane, we could show preliminary preliminary engineering for it.
And then if a DPS ends up consenting on a project, we can do a budget modification. The funding is there. I mean, my next line item shows that our fund balance sits right around 700,000. We just had an invoice, and I don't know why it was so far behind, but 92,000 for the majority of the balance of the Swan Island project. So that taxed the fund balance a little bit, but we're still sitting at 700,000 plus on fund balance for drainage. So that'll be shown in the budget. What I am recommending, just based upon the success of the project last year, is an increase to the ditching budget that we had provided in 2020 through 2021. We'd spent right around $30,000. I'm recommending a fairly substantial increase in that budget line item. I had expressed to Bill that, as they get going, your dollar goes further the more you spend. So, my anticipation is the work that they will be able to accomplish with those additional dollars is greater for the next 30 than it was the original 30, just because of mobilization cost and getting the program up and running. They're far more efficient in day 10 than they are in day 2 or 3. So, we had tremendous response from the neighborhoods and the residents as far as their support of the project. And it's something that we would like to expand on if there is an opposition. So that's the way it's listed here. I'd like your feedback on that.
I think that's a good idea.
I think the budget can support it. We've got it built into the operational end of things. So, I mean, I don't think it's a money issue. And once again, it's definitely a project that received a lot of support.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Dave? You okay with that, Dave?
If there is an opposition, the next line item is 75,000 for drainage grants. We're right at about that number at this point in the fiscal year. So we're looking at budgeting the same amount for next fiscal year. There still is plenty of interest. We also have project carryover from one fiscal year to the next. So we do have outstanding grants that we still need to fund. So if there was a decision to reduce it, we'd have to take those into consideration. But I think at the $75,000 number, the interest is there. And we can expect to see, a dollar figure in that ballpark for next fiscal year, so long as we're willing to fund that project at previous year's levels.
Any objection? If not, we'll move on to roads.
Well, there's just one quick last item and miscellaneous projects and general projects for drainage. If we're not listing one large project, any of our smaller projects will come from this line item. So those dollar figures are pretty consistent with previous years as well. So that would be our general projects, any kind of maintenance projects or, issues that come up that we have to address. So we have that listed in the budget for next fiscal year, which is a number that's realistic. So.
Everybody okay with drains then? We're going to look at the drain budget, but we're walking through the major decisions we have to make as a commission.
Right.
Any questions? Okay. Roads.
As far as roads go, we are presenting a balanced budget, and to Bill's point, let's go to page
26.
30. 33.
Got it.
If you flip back and forth from page 25 to 33, you'll notice that we do have a balanced budget. It's a little bit difficult to read just because fund balance is added in under the total item column, but we're bringing in about 260,000 in tax revenue. Just as a reminder, this account is funded through a millage that was renewed this past fall. And then we're spending about 260,000 in our activities in the next upcoming fiscal year. We do anticipate when we do dust control next fiscal year to be using calcium chloride as we had in the last fiscal year. And that's just basically the result of the bridge continuing to be closed in the upcoming year. We can talk to the dust bond provider and see if they're willing to cross that toll bridge next year. But if all things are equal, I think that their interest level last year was nil as a result of that. So we had to move to calcium chloride. I know the commission prefers dust bond. We would try to do dust bond, but if that's not the case, then we'll stick with the calcium chloride application in the frequency that we did last year, because we have the funding set the same as last year at $40,000.
Okay, one issue, Derek, that I have to raise. Under the revenue section, it shows a figure of 350,000.
So I did check with Ann. If you recall the local roads program, we have to pay all the cost of the project up front as well as the engineering. And then we submit for reimbursement to the county after the fact. We did just receive our reimbursement for last year's program. So the $350,000 I did confirm with her that is liquidity. We do have a liquid $350,000 sitting in that account. So there is a fund balance. I also want to note that the piece of equipment that we purchased this fiscal year for roadside mowing, we did end up paying cash for that out of roads. So that has been taken into consideration with the fund balance and the budget that's shown here tonight. So there was some talk about amortizing that over a period of time. She did end up paying cash in year one for that. If we did need some additional liquidity, we can take that chunk of money that she paid cash for the piece of equipment and then end up amortizing that over a period of time. but she figured that we had enough liquidity in the account to be able to pay cash for it, so she just went ahead and did that. So that already has been resolved.
So let me, Derek and I've had a little, an issue here, and I'm gonna get Sahil involved. So if you remember, the figure for the local roads program a year ago was 388,000. Does that ring a bell? Okay.
Correct.
Now, most of that money was coming from the county. We had to match it with 100 and some thousand. All right, so now we get reimbursed, and our finance director has led you to believe that that money goes back in the road fund.
Correct.
We never had that kind of money in the road fund. So she borrowed it from someplace else, in my opinion. We never had 350,000 in the road fund, never, of our side, of the maintenance dollars. So I've raised an issue, and I'm gonna ask Derek to continue to pursue that, because I think the money's gotta be paid back someplace. If it ends up in the road fund, then miraculously, we got 350,000 that we didn't have, but I don't think that's proper.
So
Do you understand what I'm saying, Sahil?
Yes, yeah.
So we'll follow up with her on that. You know, my understanding as recently as today and talking to her about it, she said that is the 350,000 is the fund balance in roads, and it's dedicated for roads. So I think if it proves to be true that that is the fund balance in the account, I think Bill's point was, well, we've got a decent chunk of change that we're sitting on in roads. You know, does it make sense to be sitting on that kind of fund balance? Maybe we need to reevaluate what's proposed for the capital work for next fiscal year and use some of that fund balance to add to the 121 we've got listed under our project, discretionary funds.
All right, and I just want to clarify to Derek and you guys, in my opinion, we never had that kind of money sitting there in the last several years. So that money's got to be, I'm surprised if it comes back and stays in the road fund. It's a blessing, but I just think it was borrowed from someplace else. That's my own opinion.
Right.
And I've been wrong before, so.
And there, what goes on with that account is there's a lot of in and out, because as we participate in these local roads programs, once again, you have to fund the project up front, engineering and the actual cost of construction, and then you submit for reimbursement. So you have a lot of money that's spent that you're waiting on reimbursements for. And it doesn't necessarily happen within the same fiscal year as the program. So you might have a 2019 program that doesn't actually happen. The construction doesn't happen until 2020. So there's a lot of overlap. It's almost like your block grant program. So it lends itself to a lot of confusion as far as, how much is owed, what is outstanding, have you been reimbursed yet? Has the contractor been paid? Has the engineering fully been paid? So, we'll resolve that. But keep in mind that as we talk about capital projects for the roads account, if there is that $350,000 sitting in there, we might want to take a look at additional projects above and beyond what's proposed in this budget on, February 9th as we sit here. So.
Okay. Questions on the road besides what we've already talked about? Les, are you on now? I see Les's name. All right. Les is not on. We're done with roads?
Well, I did just a couple of real quick items. Priority snow service is budgeted in the same amount as it was last year, right around 28,000, I think is what we spent. It could go up, it could go down. I guess we don't really know that until they come to the table and say what it's going to be. Same funding for facility and emergency snow removal. So those levels haven't changed from last fiscal year. And then we have about it actually ends up being about 116,000 that's available for discretionary expenditures. So the problem with $116,000, I don't want to say it's not a lot of money, but when you take a look at projects, it really limits what you can do with that type of money. Because, when I start talking about doing paving work for $116,000 between engineering, mobilization, it doesn't give me much left to do actual work. So, what we're looking at, if that number doesn't change, is probably crack sealing, joint sealing, because that's really those kind of dollar figures lend itself to that type of work. Not much else other than that. So.
And chip sealing, you could chip seal some road with that.
there was some talk about that at our previous, meeting and yeah, we'd have to take a look at how far that would go with chip sealing, but that's an idea as well. So we at this point, we kind of got it as a placeholder. That's what you have to play with. We can determine what we want to do with that money, at a later date.
And John, on that point on chip seal, after our last discussion a couple months ago or 3 or 4 months ago
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
Laura, her office is in Ann Arbor. So she went on, talked to somebody at the Washtenaw County Road Commission, and they have some
Okay.
nice publicity stuff to share with the residents. So anyway, she forwarded me a copy of it, and we can get that if we're going to do some chip sealing.
Well, that'd be good to look at because that stuff works. I think Les mentioned that up in Grayling they use it on 72. I think they chip seal 72,
Oh yeah, we talked.
and for long distances. Yeah, so it's another viable thought.
It's a good one. Okay, are we okay with roads then? So drains and roads, we'll move on. Water, are you gonna go back to page 25 for the water summary?
Hold on, I think this is Les. Just give me.
Okay, Les is trying to get in here, so.
So Derek. Okay, do you have, shows that you're on mute.
*6 gets them off.
Are you calling in by phone? Okay, so try hitting *6 and that should unmute you. Okay, that's not working. Okay. 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 All right, sounds good. Yeah, if you got something to comment on, just give me a call and then I'll relay it, okay? All right, sounds good. Bye. He said he can hear everything we're talking about, and if he's got something to comment on, he'll give me a ring, and then I'll relay that message to you guys. So, gotta love technology, right?
Okay, now back to page 25.
Okay, so we're on to water. We received our adjustment or our proposed adjustment from GLWA. In running it through our various equations, it results in a cost increase to the township of $27,218. When you take a look at the commodity charge adjustments and you take a look at the monthly basically ready to serve fee. So I know it's been the practice of Groseal Township and a lot of other communities in the area to pass those costs on to the consumer just to make sure that we're at least covering the cost of the increase from GLWA. So if we are to do that, if that's the recommendation and if that's what we're planning on doing, it's an adjustment of our water rate charge from $11.57 to $11.86 per unit. And that really, what that boils down to is about $5.80 per quarter to our average consumer, or $23 per year on the average water bill. And that generates enough to be able to support that cost increase to GLWA or from GLWA. We also have to take into consideration sales projections when we look at these rates. We're projecting sales totaling about 255 million gallons next year, which is slightly down from this year's projection of 259 million gallons. And we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Once again, on February 9th, that's where we are looking like we're going to be, but there's a good chance that our sales in this fiscal year will be greater than the projections with COVID and everybody being home more often. So what we usually do is we run a 3-year average on our consumption in order to make the projection for next year, to take some of the highs and lows out of it. And we'll adjust the projection depending upon kind of where we're at later on in the fiscal year with this number. So that could change, just so you know. Are there any questions on that?
So what'll happen on the water and sewer rate, and as well as the refuse rate, we'll deal with those. We'll include them in the budget for now, but we'll have separate hearings in the spring on those rate increases with more information, like we always do.
So we do have a reliability study that is due. It's due every 5 years. So we budgeted for expenditures for the reliability study. The grant application footnote there is incorrect. So you can basically ignore that. We do have some additional funding set aside for a residential cross connection program that we're going to be required to implement next fiscal year. We've submitted a proposal to the state of Michigan phasing the residential cross connection program for the township across a 3-year period of time. Basically, the residential cross connection program has always been on the books. The cross connection legislation that the state of Michigan has never differentiated between commercial, industrial, or residential programs. It's just the state of Michigan had never really enforced the residential component and requirements associated with that legislation. So Eagle has really been cracking down on communities with regard to implementing a residential program. We recently had a water sanitary audit done in October. And that is one of the things that we got dinged on, was the fact that we didn't end up having, or we don't have, a residential cross connection program. So there is going to be some cost with implementing that program, but more than necessarily the cost is the change that it's going to present to our residents. So initially, this program would look like a survey in the initial year to determine whether or not you have a potential cross connection risk at your residence. So the survey would ask, do you have a sprinkler system? Do you have a pool? Do you have some other item that is associated with your house that could present a cross connection concern? And then in subsequent years, if it's found that you do have a cross connection risk, there'll be things that will be required, like backflow prevention tests. And that is something that's going to be new to our residents, that they're going to have to grow accustomed to. And unfortunately, in certain circumstances, there could be a cost associated with that when you have, for example, backflow testing assembly that has to be tested on a certain interval. But we really don't have a choice on this. It's something that we have to do to make sure that we're in compliance. And it is going to be a bit burdensome from an administrative standpoint, because we not only have to send out notices to these residents on the required intervals to make sure they're in compliance, we also have to keep a running record, not dissimilar to our lead service line inventory of all those homes that might have a cross connection issue, and then also make sure that they're in compliance. So it is something that's new that we're going to have to do next fiscal year, and it's something that you should be aware of. So are there any questions on that? If there aren't any questions, there are some just minor items that are built into the water budget that you should be aware of. And I'm looking at page 36, just for reference. We do need some new roofs on our pump houses. One pump house, which isn't necessarily in operation any longer, other than from a storage building standpoint, at Bridge Road, that's in need of a new roof. And then our pump station over in Trenton, on the west side of the Parkway Bridge, we should be putting a new roof on that as well. So there's some pretty minor allocations that are built into the budget for that. One of the other items that's kind of a luxury, but is definitely needed. For any of you that have been down to the DPW garage, we currently use a tractor trailer, like a semi-truck trailer, to do a fair amount of storage with on the east side of the building. In talking with John, he received a proposal to get rid of that tractor trailer and go with a more permanent storage structure, lean-to type structure on the side of the building, an enclosed structure, to be able to absorb the storage requirements that tractor trailer provides. It just, it's not a long-term option. It's in bad shape. And I think that, the desire is to move away from storing your stuff in a semi-truck trailer and move it towards more of a permanent structure. So there's some dollar figures included in the budget for that. We are dealing with some aging, water meter infrastructure, and we're seeing the need for replacement on a more accelerated and increased frequency. So there's some additional funding that has been set aside for meter head replacements. And then also, as in previous years, we have some allocations for lead service line replacements. There are adjustments throughout the budget. If we take a look at page 36, based upon year-to-date expenditures, and all those have been accounted for, as well as our bond and our interest payments on the various bonds that we have for the water main work we've done in the past. So, are there any questions with regards to the proposed water budget for next fiscal year?
The only thing I would say to everybody, the water budget at this point is balanced. Okay, the water budget's balanced, okay? Right?
Yeah, I think we're only a couple thousand off, and that's been left that way intentionally, just because we know we're going to have some adjustments as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. So
Now, this budget doesn't include the water main we're going to talk about later tonight. That's a separate bonded budget issue.
right.
Okay, so this is for the operations, but it's a balanced budget. And are there any questions on water? Anybody got a problem with water the way it is? All right, hearing none, we'll move on.
Sewer, looking at page 25, there is a slight adjustment in the commodity. So for those of you that, just to remind you, and I know Dave's new, and I know he knows this already, but we don't maintain separate meters for water and sewer. So our revenue that we derive off of the sewer charges are based upon the water sales quantities. So as we had talked about in the water budget earlier, if we anticipate a reduction in the water sales, we also anticipate a reduction in the sewer revenue if the quantity goes down. So the adjustment that's proposed in there is just basically to adjust for the commodity sale reduction that we were anticipating and to maintain the revenue levels at what they were in previous years. Also worth noting, the revenue that's generated from the sewer account or from the sewer charges, the service charges, and we do have a readiness to serve charge and we have a commodity charge. Those charges not only go to support the sewer system island-wide, but also the wastewater treatment plant. So you have revenue coming in from that line item that's ultimately transferred over into the wastewater treatment plant budget. So you're aware of that. So there is a line item here with regards to anticipation of bond revenue. So what that is, and we'll talk about it a bit more in action item B.
Wait a minute, the 250.
Yeah, the 250,000 that's listed here
On page 25.
on page 25. So if you look at the action item B that we're going to be talking about tonight, if you recall, we bonded about $6 million, and those funds were to be utilized for the wastewater treatment plant, the bar screen project, okay, water main work up on Park Lane, and then also the water main work that we're talking about this evening in the next action item. When you take a look at what's being recommended tonight, there will be, if we don't eat it up in contingency, assuming that the project comes in at or near budget or at or near the contracted amount, there should be some surplus remaining in the bond revenue after all the projects are complete. This budget anticipates taking that leftover money and putting it back into sewer activities, which is in compliance with what the original bond language allows for. So the original bond language was included in your packet tonight at the tail end of action item B, so that you can see for yourself what the allowances are for that. That money doesn't do me any good sitting in an account. We need to put it in my opinion, put it back into the infrastructure that bond was intended to support. So we're saying, okay, we've got about $325,000 remaining if the award should occur as designed tonight. We would take whatever's left over after contingency, and there might not be anything left over if we eat up all $325,000. But I think for budgeting purposes, we've got $250,000 coming over from bond revenue that would go to support sewer capital improvements in the next fiscal year. So that's what that means. Does that make sense to everybody where that money's coming from? And we can talk about it a little bit more in action item B, so it'll be a little bit clearer, but that's what we have listed here. Additionally, we have 150,000 in cleaning and televising, which is consistent with previous years, as well as costs associated with our asset management plan and basically our sewer survey work. So, that has been accounted for. Sewer is not too different than what it has been in previous years. Are there any questions with regards to sewer? And we're looking at page like 38 and 39 when we're talking about what's budgeted for the upcoming fiscal year.
So basically, the way I look at it, sewer is pretty much the way it's been. But this budget that we have in front of us is unbalanced at this point, because on page 40, Derek's got to plug in a number from sewer to transfer money, sewer revenue money over to the wastewater treatment plant. That's the way it's always done. And they don't have that figure yet. And, but it will be balanced. And when we talk about the wastewater plant next, we're going to look, our primary focus there is going to be on our capital outlay. And it's over $1 million. And that will be balanced using the fund balance. We've carried this $3 million. Everybody remember that in the wastewater fund? And we'll draw off that to balance the budget because it's mostly related to capital. Am I making any sense? Okay, I hope so.
Yeah, Bill gave a good summary of what's going on as it relates to the wastewater treatment plant. I've listed some major changes there on the bottom of page 25. We're going to talk later tonight about our operator contract with Suez. If that is approved by the township board, we know what those figures are, so those have been built into the budget, but the adjustments associated with their contract. We do have a variety of engineering costs in there associated with the ACO and also our asset management plan, so those have been considered, as well as the revised figure for our sludge hauling. Last year we had budgeted 280,000 because we just wanted to be conservative, and I don't think the bids had come in at the point that we were establishing the budget. So we've made those adjustments for what those costs are going to be for this upcoming fiscal year, assuming the contract is extended with our previous vendor, which we used last year. So I believe we have that as 105. Last year we spent, I believe, right around 100. So, and then to Bill's point, if you take a look at page 41, I want to direct your attention to the capital outlay. We do have primary clarifiers 1 and 3, or 1 of 3, and secondary clarifiers listed under our capital work at $480,000. That number is going to change because the costs associated with that project are going to span this and next fiscal year. Matter of fact, I think I had mentioned earlier in the meeting, we had an invoice come in for about $150,000. This 480 is the vast majority of that project. As we pay off the costs associated with that project within this fiscal year, that number will be reduced. So that is a number that will be adjusted as those invoices come in and we make payments on that. And we'll just show whatever the balance is going to be of that project in the next fiscal year, whatever we're going to incur after April 1. So just so you're aware of that. We had talked in previous conversations and at previous meetings that one of the major capital improvements that we wanted to address over the wastewater treatment plant was a long-term fix to the HVAC system. We worked this past fall at getting some heat for the guys over there, but that was a temporary stopgap measure to, at least provide them the basic necessities until we're able to do a thorough evaluation of what's necessary for an HVAC system plant-wide. We've put a number figure in there that was based upon estimates and bids that were received in previous years. That's a placeholder at this point. We'll probably have a better handle on things as we go through the design and engineering process for that work. But that's the large capital improvement project that we're planning on for next fiscal year for the plant. We do have the installation of the clarifier 2 of 3, the primary clarifier 2 of 3. And that is a contracted price. We know what that is. That's with a vendor that we have already entered into a contract with. And we had mandated that work happen after the beginning of the new fiscal year. So that work is budgeted for, it's contracted, and it's an actual cost. So just so you're aware of that. Did have the opportunity, and Ryan, I want to thank you very much for providing the additional capital improvement projects into the capital outlay account that Ryan is recommending and is asking for. So that's where you see the balance of the capital work with raw sewage pump number 4, level indicator, power conditioner, EQ basin SCADA information, or EQ basin SCADA software, Cameron system repair, and Ryan's recommending cutting his own grass for next fiscal year. So we put some money in there for him to buy a mower. So that makes up the majority, actually all of the capital work that we have budgeted for next fiscal year. And I know that's a lot to take in between Ryan and I. Hopefully we can answer any questions you have about it.
Does anybody have any questions? I know this stuff's, when we talk about all these sewage pumps and whatnot and clarifiers with numbers on them, it doesn't mean that we all know exactly what clarifier we're talking about, but generally these are the projects we've gone and looked at the plant.
And what might be helpful is if you go back, there was a budget memo, I think probably 4 months ago, that I put together that kind of reorganized the capital improvement schedule for the wastewater treatment plant and moved some priorities around. We took some things that were listed on the list and we pushed them over to the ACO work. So Ohio was getting waivers from Eagle to allow that to happen. So some things that might have existed in previous years on the capital list might not exist next year, but it's not because we forgot about them or aren't planning on doing them. For example, the intermediate lift pumps, we're just trying to push those off to the ACO work just because the money that's necessary to do that work has to come from some other source than the operational budget, just because those dollar figures are so huge. We want to lump them into basically the funding structure for the ACO mandates. So,
All right, so everybody's silent there. Are there any questions that anybody has? I mean, our bottom line is at the wastewater plant, everything's pretty much the same operationally. It's the capital items that are going to be expensive, and these are all things that we need to do. So,
yeah, I don't mean to bore you with the details. I can see eyes glazing over, but just go ahead and stop me and ask me if you got a question, what the detail is on something, because we got Sohail here, he can speak to things, and Ryan, more than happy to go into further detail on some of this stuff with you as well.
I see we have a citizen, Craig Pilkington, joined. Hi, Craig. Are you there? Well, anyway, we're talking about the wastewater treatment plant, placement of motors and pumps, and repair at our clarifiers. In case you can hear us, Craig.
So are there any questions regarding the wastewater treatment plant for the next fiscal year?
No.
Okay. If there isn't any, I'd like to move to refuse. Page 26 is the summary. And let's see what the budget revenue is on page 42. I believe expenditures are on page, or at least they should be on page 43.
43, yeah.
Yep. So I just want to bring your attention to something we've been talking about for about the past 2 years. Refuse had built a fairly significant fund balance. When you have a fund balance in a non-capital intensive account like refuse, we don't own our own trucks. We're not buying anything. We're not saving money to be able to support capital purchases. We wanted to, as a commission, and we recommended to the township to basically start utilizing that fund balance to subsidize some of the rates and not present rate increases to our residents until that fund balance was basically used up. So we've gotten to the point now at the end of this fiscal year where we're going to need to implement a rate adjustment to bring revenues in line with the expenditures from an operational standpoint. So in order to do that, we're looking at making up about $150,000 because that's what the shortage is based upon the rates we're charging and the expenditures we're experiencing. So included in the summary on page 26 is the calculation of that adjustment. The adjustment for the average homeowner is going from about $15 per month or $45 a quarter up to $18.23 per month or $54.69 a quarter. So that would be the difference to the average homeowner. If you take a look at the expenditures that we have in this account, we've anticipated in the budget all contractual changes as far as rates are concerned with not only our refuse hauler, which is priority, but also with regards to the Riverview landfill. And you'll see there's not much of a change from last fiscal year. The rates with Riverview do go up slightly, but we've been seeing fluctuations in quantities of garbage that goes there. And for the majority of it, it's been going down. So although you might have a rate increase, you're still seeing a reduction in the overall quantity that's going to the landfill, which is keeping our costs fairly consistent. We also had to do a slight adjustment in what we had budgeted last year for bridge tolls. We're consistently seeing about $3,000 on average per month in bridge toll costs associated with garbage truck traffic. So if you remember, within our within our contract with Priority, it was our priority to make sure that we weren't assessed an administrative charge by any of the bidders for garbage hauling based upon their perceived cost of hauling trash across a toll bridge. So we basically said, we're going to cover whatever that cost is to make sure that we're paying actual cost and not perceived cost in basically a bid that was tempered with the risk of tolls, being a factor in their business model in the pricing they provided to us. So we've anticipated, based upon the past year, what those costs are, and that's been allocated for within the budget at $27,000 for the remaining 9 months we anticipate the bridge being closed. The glass recycle container costs are built into this budget at $7,260, and that's anticipated that the frequency of pickup is anticipated at one haul every 3 weeks. Other than that, that is the vast majority of the refuse account. Changes to revenue, changes to charges, changes to some expenditure line items.
Okay, are there any questions on the refuse budget?
No.
All right, hearing none. So we've gone through drains, roads, water, sewer, wastewater plant, and now refuse. We've answered most questions, I think. What I propose is, and we just talked about the wastewater plant, that when those numbers are finalized between the end of this fiscal year and the capital projects and then next, I'm going to ask Derek to, when the final budget goes to the township board, that we end up getting a copy of the DPS budget with the final figures in it. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Just so we can have it. And so we haven't had many questions from any of you. We've been through this budget thoroughly, and I'm comfortable with it, with the changes we've talked about, including, I'm going to go back to that Park Lane drain. That will not show up as a specific project, just the some preliminary engineering. Other than that, are there any final questions on the budget, or we're ready for a motion? Phil?
This is totally unrelated to what we talked about, but when I was going through the budget in the area of community development revenues, Derek, can you explain what woodlands, wetlands monitoring fees of $5,500 is from, and what is it?
Yeah, so we charge fees for a lot of different things in community development, like on developments, like new home construction. There's a fee structure associated with, different components of a permit. So that's just a listing of a revenue component of a permit structure. Does that answer your question?
Right. Okay.
So let's say you have a new home that's constructed. If
Right.
we have a cost that we incur in order to review a wetlands, is there a wetlands condition that exists on the property? We charge you for that review. The taxpayer shouldn't pay for the review for your private property, so we charge you that fee.
Okay. The monitoring part of it is what I was concerned with, and I didn't know whether that was something that was ongoing, or that's basically a one-time thing when somebody presents a proposal to build something, and that has to be looked into.
Right. So
Okay.
all of our permit fees are, for the most part, money in, money out. We charge
Got
you
it.
for costs that we incur. Okay.
Got it. No problem.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the budgets the way we've discussed them tonight and presented them tonight. I'll make that motion to approve the budgets for the next fiscal year. Is there
Support.
No,
Kennedy.
supported it. Phil Kennedy. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So the budgets are approved, and thank you, Derek, for a good job on that. Thank you. Next item is item A under item B, the water main contract award. This is a biggie for us, and it's a big report. So you got the floor again. How's your voice holding up?
It's doing all right. And thank you for your patience on the budget. I know that can be a bit tedious and, detailed, but I appreciate the time you provide and allowing me to talk to you about it. As Bill had mentioned, this is a big one. This is $3.7 million we're talking about. It's been a project we've been discussing for probably the past 18 to 24 months. And I think it probably was even discussed prior to that, with Bill talking with Ann about bonding and bond revenues to achieve some of these water main replacements that are so very needed on the island. If you recall, this is the second time we've bid this project. Bid the project last year. Bids came in a little bit higher than what we had anticipated and what we thought the project would cost. You guys, as a commission, decided to rebid the project, and I think that was the right choice. If you take a look in the history of this, the bids came in better than what they did the first time, to the tune of almost $300,000. So that was a wise choice by you guys to rebid this project. Just for the benefit of the residents, there were 3 sections of water main replacement that were prioritized by the commission after a lot of discussion. I know Les had a big hand in recommendations. John had a big hand in recommendations. The 3 sections that we all consensed on as far as what was needed to be replaced, what was indicated on our reliability studies. Those 3 sections were Meridian Road, Church, and then the third one was Paulina. So a little bit of work on the north end, a little bit of work in the middle of the island, and then Meridian, the majority of that work is farther towards the south end of the island. So when we went out for bid, we received 4 bids. The bid tally is included in the packet. There are a variety of different options that were asked of our bidders as far as providing us some information on what options, cost-wise would exist if we did a few things. So I want to give you guys a little bit of information with regards to these deduct items. Deduct items 1 and deduct items 2 were relative to keeping spoils on the island, and deduct item 2. So that was deduct item 1. Deduct item 2 was with regards to starting the project after the bridge reopened. So you can see on the bid tally list what those premiums are for those different options and what
So
those.
you're talking about page 46.
Yes, I'm sorry, page 46. So you can see when you take a look at the total amounts, what we would save by picking up these various deduct options, or what we would pay as a premium if we wanted to do something other than what these deduct items provided. When we take a look at what monies we have available, and I'm referring back to the cover page, and what outstanding costs we have that will tax that bond revenue account, we end up with right around $4 million in available funds to do this work, okay? That put us in a position where, at least from my standpoint, it would be a stretch to do all 3 sections that we had bid. At $4 million, I think we can comfortably do 2 of those sections. I had talked to John, obviously Meridian, and I talked to Les. Meridian obviously is the #1 priority. And of the 2 remaining options, it was the opinion of Les and John that church was the more immediate need based upon the condition of that main in that area. So the recommendation before you tonight is to move forward with doing Meridian and church, with the low bidder in the circumstance that we do those 2 sections and keep the spoils on the island. The low bidder for those options was Brico, and Raines put together a letter of recommendation referencing them as the lowest qualified bidder for a variety of different options that were selected, but included the one that is before you tonight. So referring back to the budget that's listed on the cover page, once again, we had a little over $4 million available after we considered all the things that tax this account that are still outstanding. If we're to fund Meridian and church, you're going to spend about $3.7 million doing that. That leaves you with $326,000. Consequently, and just a matter of coincidence, $326,000 is very close to a 10% contingency that is normally recommended on a project. So that really provides us a little bit of cushion to be able to ensure that the project has some coverage if there are some overages associated with the project. So long story short, what's being recommended tonight is to move forward with those 2 sections of the 3, leave the spoils on the island, not wait till the bridge reopens, and work with the lowest qualified bidder based upon Raines' recommendation, and that's Brico. So I've said a lot. I'd like to take questions you might have, because I know there's a lot here to digest. So.
Well, okay, there are no comments. I've been through this in detail. If you look at page 46, everybody, at the bottom, it says section 2 church. The figure of, it says item number 1 off to the left. The figure of $3,716,861 is the figure we're talking about. Okay, so that's I circled that. That's the award we're talking about. And so everybody's been silent. Are there any questions? We've talked about this. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to award the contract to Brico Excavating at a total cost for sections 2 church, sections 3 Meridian, the total cost of $3,716,861. That's a motion. Is there support?
Support, Pusdesris.
Lenny supported. Any further discussion?
Swile, do you want to add anything to this at all? I don't want to cut you
No,
out.
I think you explained it very clearly. I think it's a very straightforward recommendation on the selection of the sections and the alternates. So I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Okay, with that, all in favor? So
I've got one question Okay, I'm looking at page 46 and we're just deducting item one or only item one, right?
Yeah, only item one, that's correct.
In other words, we're only item one. Okay, so I'm on the right line now. Oh, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, again, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next item is item C, the sledge hauling contract. This should be simple.
What we need simple at this point, right? What I'm asking for is an extension of our contract with Gullet, the provider of our sledge hauling for last year. They did a good job at a competitive price. They're willing to hold their prices in those areas that they have control of. The only real change, I think, is a net $5,400 to what they had provided last year. And I included the bid results from last year, which kind of shows you at $5,400, even if it's $5,400 more, it's still way below the other bids that we got. So that would be my recommendation, go ahead and extend.
Okay, and so if you open up all these long sheets, you don't have them, but just a reminder, there were 3 bids we took last year. Waste Management's bid was $254,000. Merrill Brothers bid was $252,000. Gullet's bridge was $88,000. So you're talking basically almost a $250,000 for the other 2 bidders. Gullet's was 88. And Derek monitored them. They did a good job. They were about 100,000.
Yeah, when they ended up with the total quantities, it was right about $100,000 that it cost us last year.
So it still was a savings of 150,000 over what we were doing. So I would strongly recommend that in fact, I'll make a motion to approve the award to Gullet Sanitation for the decanting and hauling of the biosolids at the wastewater plant. Extend their contract with these additional costs of $5,450. That's the motion. Is there support?
Support.
Dave Nadeau supported. Any other questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion
Aye.
passed.
No.
Next item is item number D, the Alba Island Pump Station Repair Contract. Derek?
Yeah, we've got a problem over at the Elba Island Pump Station. And just for those that don't know, we have a force main over there. We've got a couple of force mains around the island, a lot of them on the south end. There's a fault in the discharge pipe. Basically, the discharge pipe has rotted out. So anytime that pump operates, a portion of the discharge ends up flowing back into the wet well. So obviously the efficiency of the discharge is not there when you're losing about 50% of your discharge effluent anytime you operate the pump. So what we need to do is to excavate around that wet well and replace that discharge pipe where it's rotted out. We developed a specification. We bid out the project. We got 2 bids. The low bidder being TSP, who actually was the project contractor on our Swan Island pump station. So the recommendation tonight is to move forward with the repair with them. And there's a letter of recommendation of award in your packet from Rains on this one as well.
All right, so you've had a chance to look at that. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll make the motion that we award a contract to TSP Environmental for repair work at the sanitary lift station located on Elba Island in the amount of $53,604. Is there support?
Support, Pusdesris.
Pusdesris, support. If there's no further discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Next item is item number E, the Suez contract.
Suez's contract is a current 1-year term that expires on April 1st of 2021. If you remember, we had negotiated terms and conditions of this 1-year term, but also 2 5-year options probably about a year ago. And we had these options listed because we wanted to make sure that at the end of this initial one-year term, we had some ability to extend the contract further with them. So what's before you tonight is to pick up or to recommend to the Grosio Township Board the pickup of one of those 5-year options, basically extending their contract out to March 31st of 2026. At that point in time, there's an additional 5-year option, which we can choose to pick up or not. That was listed in the original negotiated contract that we had talked about a year ago. So that's what this is all about. Obviously, we've been happy with Suez. Ryan's done a great job over there. They're familiar with our plant. We felt that their rates were competitive when we ended up looking at their contract and also competition. So that's why we had provided for in the current contract these options. So that's what action item E is regarding.
And I would only add, you recall in the past year, we had that management audit undertaken. And there were no significant negative findings in that. So that means that the job that Suez is doing, that Ryan's doing, they're doing the proper things, trying to take care of an old plant. And we're going to try to make a lot of capital improvements. So based on that, we want to move forward with the award for the first 5 years of this program. And the one thing, Derek, you didn't mention, I don't think, is the adjustment that we negotiated back then was, and if I'm reading this right, there would be an initial 4.2% increase.
Correct.
And that's a one-time increase. And then all the other future year increases are dictated by the contract, which is a CPI formula.
Right. So Bill's referring to page 97, which gives the actual dollar figure for the next year. So it was, I believe, a 2% plus CPI that was listed in the contract. So that's where the 4.2 is coming from.
Okay. All right. So with that, I will make the motion that we recommend to the Township Board the approval of option 1, the term of April 1st, 2020 for 5 years to March 31 of 2026 to award a contract to Suez for the operation and maintenance of our wastewater treatment plant in accordance with the agreement that's attached. With the first year being a 4.2% adjustment and the CPI and the contract taking over after that. That's the motion. Is there support?
Support. Nadeau.
And thank you, Dave. And if there are no other questions, are there any? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The final action item tonight is on the snowplow purchase. Eric?
So if you recall, this current fiscal year and last spring, we had ordered a F-350 pickup truck to replace one of our aging F-250s. When we ordered that truck, Gorno had provided us a price for a plow. We had decided at that point we would just buy the truck from them on the state bid contract and then solicit pricing on a plow after the fact. So we have taken delivery of that truck. We went out and solicited pricing for a plow. The pricing we received is included in this action item. What we're recommending is to move forward with a stainless plow and installation at a cost of $74.99 with complete hitch. And this is a Boss 9-foot 2-inch plow, which is consistent with the other plows that we have. The plow that we have on the truck that we are taking out of frontline service, the intent is to take that truck and turn it into ordinance enforcement vehicle, and we would maintain ownership of that plow in case we needed to take that truck and put it into plow service. At least we have a plow for that truck. So it's just another level of redundancy by doing things the way we're doing them in the action item tonight.
I didn't know that, but that's a good idea. So on the reuse of the old.
Right.
Bill? You have a question?
No, I was just scratching my head.
Oh, okay. Are there any questions about this? Hearing
Yeah, I
none.
have a quick one. I have a quick one if you don't mind.
No.
And just because I forgot when we ordered this truck, I forgot if the truck came equipped with a snowplow prep package from the factory or not.
It did, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll make the motion that the commission recommends to the Township Board the approval of the purchase and installation of a 9-foot, 2-inch Boss stainless steel plow with controls and lighting at a cost not to exceed $7,499. Excuse me.
Support Kennedy.
Second with Kennedy. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the, let's see, the manager's report. You've been talking an awful lot, but
Yeah. I'll make it quick. One thing I gotta say is, there is something that's sad this evening, and that is that I believe today is Sohail's birthday. Is that correct, Sohail? And he gets
Tomorrow.
it's tomorrow. Okay. Well, at least it's tomorrow. I was gonna say, spending it with us for your birthday is very sad. So.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be with you guys.
So anyways, on to the water loss report. When you run the numbers for the aggregate since February of 2018, we're at 10.186%. And obviously this is a running total. So we're a little bit down from what we were in previous months, but just keep in mind this is an average. So, and then over at the wastewater treatment plant, there's also some figures there with regards to untreated water coming, or I'm sorry, non-municipal type water coming into the plant. 62.82% for December 2020 was the monthly total over there. So are there any questions about the lost water report? If there are not, I had mentioned earlier in my report when we were talking about the budget, the sanitary survey, the water system sanitary survey. So I believe so how is it every 3 years?
every 5.
I think it's every 3 years. I have to check, Derek. I'm not sure.
I think it's every 3 years. Eagle comes down and they review your water operations program. So that includes your cross connection program, your testing, all the different things that relate to how you operate your water system. So we had ours in October. John and I sat down with the state and went over the system that we're running, and we had very positive results of that survey. So that's good information for our water system. It tells us we're doing the things that we need to be doing. There were some suggested modifications to our program. There were also some a mandate, and that one mandate that was discussed with you earlier, which was the residential cross connection program. That's where that came out of. So just wanted to let you know that it was a good survey, a good audit. We did very well, and there were some suggested changes, that residential program being one of them. So I just wanted to mention that, and wanted to commend John. He's our operator in charge, and he passed with flying colors. So that was great that he's treating our system well and treating our residents well. So wanted to give a kudos to him on that. If there aren't any questions on the sanitary survey, I'd like to turn it over to Sohail, maybe to talk to us a little bit about our project status list, which was included in your packet.
Sure. If I can go back to the sanitary survey, Derek, that's when they issue a report, and that's when they remind you that we have to do a reliability study every 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. That report that they issue. Okay, going to the DPS projects update. We'll start with the Park Lane project. Derek mentioned earlier that we are performing the preliminary design, and we will stop at that. We're not going to continue into the bidding process. So we're almost 90% done. We're waiting for some work by Wayne County to clean up some culverts and manholes so we can determine flows. But again, we're going to stop at the conclusion of the preliminary design stage. As far as Swan Island drainage
Before you go on,
project,
so Al, before you go on, when you submit next month's report, I'm going to comment in several places here. But when you submit, make sure you call that design, the preliminary design,
sure.
okay? So, because I don't want to go any further with that at this point. That's my personal, it's a lot of money. If we were to proceed with that project, we need to really evaluate it. Okay, now Swan Island, sorry.
Sounds good. Swan Island, the project is substantially completed. We have a minor punch list items, mostly restoration. I know that Derek, you mentioned you received an invoice. It took a while to get an invoice from the contract on this project.
Yeah, which is not a problem. If they don't want to be paid, then, you know.
Well, yeah, we had to prod them so they can get paid. So that's why it was so late. On the water main projects, we just went through the recommendation of award, and we covered the selection. I guess we're going to proceed with sections 2 and 3 with alternate number 1, and the awardee is Brico Contractors. Once the Township Board reviews the recommendation of the DPS Commission, will start the contract process if it's a go.
And that'll be on the Township Board agenda for the 22nd of February.
On the sanitary sewer system, township-wide, phase 3 of the cleaning came to a halt because of some access issues with high water at some manholes. The contractor, Safeway, couldn't get to him to complete his televising and cleaning. So what we've done so far, we're going to submit those reports as part of the asset management plan review for DEQ on May 1st. The wastewater treatment plant project, raw sewage pump number 1 was completed. Raw sewage pump number 4 and intermediate pumps, that project is going to be bundled with the ACO improvements, which is a big clarifier we'll be adding. We did apply for a Part 41 permit in time before December 31st. And we requested the extension of time from Eagle for that submittal and for the follow-up completion of design. It was supposed to be due on February 11th. Now it's due in July. And we are pretty much waiting for their comments. They are doing a review of the drawings and the specifications, and hopefully there won't be too many comments on those. The bidding schedule for this is going to be in 2022 with a completion of October 31st of 2024. The HV.
Would you add that to your statement, what the bidding?
I will. I just wanted to confirm with Eagle the timeline. Next time I will be adding the total timeline with the extension of times we received from them to this report. So you'll be aware of where we stand as far as the approvals, the bidding, and the completion dates.
So David, where that's significant is we need to identify the funding structure for that ACO work so it coincides with the mandates that Sohail just mentioned on what that timeline looks like. So as we talk about township finances, we need to be very aware of those schedules that he's talking about. So.
And there is a long history behind these dates. I mean, the original schedule was very aggressive, but it would have caused a big burden financially on the township. So we worked diligently with Eagle to defer these times, the timeline pretty much into 2024, so we can afford these projects. On the HVAC lab unit, we installed, as Derek mentioned earlier, some intermediate improvements in the form of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Now, the HV system was evaluated part of the asset management plan, and the recommendation of improvements is forthcoming. Once that comes around, we'll be bringing recommendations to the DPS Commission on the next step in the form of a project that you may want to consider to undertake to take care of the HVAC system once and for all at the plant. On the bar screens
On that,
project, sorry,
wow, would you be coming back to us in April on that?
I am hoping it all depends on the asset management report that's been prepared by Fishback, and it depends on the recommendation. I'm hoping if it does take place before April, I'll bring it to the April meeting for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only benchmark for me is April is the next fiscal year, so that
Okay.
would be a little helpful.
We'll put a push
I
on
didn't
it so
want
we
it to come
can get,
back in March. I didn't want it to come back in March, that's all.
no problem. We'll put a push on him to get this taken care of, and we'll bring it back in April.
Well, either April or May or June, I don't think it matters much at this point.
I'm gonna make a note of it. Okay, we go to the bar screens project. There are some punch list items pending. There is an issue that the parent is facing in the form of delivery through the chute from the compactor to the dumpster. They are addressing that issue with their staff. There's going to be some redesign made on the chute itself and the conveyor so they can be addressing the debris that's going to be generated from the screens. As far as the conveyor covers, those will be installed in March, along with the sluice gate that's going to be delivered shortly to the plant. The basis of design, plant improvements. The project design was completed and submitted to Eagle for review along with the Part 41 permit application prior to the December 31st deadline. The asset management plan preparation on the sewer system. The asset inventory and condition assessment at the plant were completed. The GPS locating of this sanitary system manholes was also completed. Manholes are currently being inspected. The target date for completing the manhole inspection is April 30th, 2021, weather permitting. They had to come to a complete halt because of the temperatures. They cannot inspect these manholes during very cold temperatures because what happens is the steam that's coming out from a warmer media in the manholes is causing them visibility issues to evaluate and assess the condition of the manholes. So we're hoping that once the temperatures go back up, they'll go back and finish the inspections. The annual report on the asset management plan is due on May 1st, and we intend to submit that before May 1st. The primary and final clarifier improvements. The contract with Wise Construction is signed, and we will be reviewing shop drawings as soon as they start coming to us. Some of them started coming, but again, not the entire shop drawings have been received yet. The anticipated starting date on the project is March 15th of 2021. Any questions on the report?
No.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lyle.
Thanks, Ohio.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any discussion items. Jim's not on. So
Yeah, I don't know. Brian, are you there?
I don't think he is.
No. See, I'm not sure what happened to Jim. He was on earlier, but I.
What's up? Sorry.
Did Jim fall off?
Yeah, he was gone a long time ago.
He was, so I know he was gonna make mention of roads, so I'm not sure. Maybe he had something come up. So,
All right, well, there's no comment that I have on it, roads at this point. So we'll go around if there's any updates from commissioners. Well, David, we'll start with you. Any updates from you on any comments?
No updates, but I do want to comment on Derek's helpfulness in helping me find my way through this mass of paperwork. That he's always more than willing to take some time to explain things to me. So I'm trying to come along as quick as I can.
I'm sure he appreciates that. He does do a lot of work, and the things are very thorough that he gives us, so.
Correct.
Anytime anybody shows interest, I'm always willing to talk to them about it. It's, it's good that you're interested in it. So thank you.
No, I know and I appreciate it.
Okay, Lenny, any comments?
Yes, sir. Well, I bumped into Derek earlier today and thanked him in the hallway, but I want to say thank you for the effort you put into this packet. The lack of questions was not due to lack of interest. It was due to how this package was put together and how it was covered. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
John Reilly.
Yes, I wanted to mention that Township has been doing a great job, the DPW, on helping to keep the bike path clean. With good sunny days, when that snow is knocked down or brushed off, it keeps the bike path very clean and it's extremely usable. So it eliminates, ice, hidden ice, that kind of thing. And people have a place to walk, especially with this COVID. They want to get out at least a little bit. And I've seen numerous people, and it's been very clean.
Good, thank you for that. Anything else?
No, that's enough for now.
Okay, Phil,
No, I have nothing further.
appreciate you being on. That's dedication, being a little on vacation. And then Les, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So we thank you for being on tonight's meeting. I don't have any other comments. I noticed one citizen is hanging in here. It's Craig Pilkington. Craig, did you want to address the DPS Commission?
I would have actually got a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
And
Hold on.
thanks, Joel.
Craig, you mind if you wait just one quick second? I got Les on the phone.
Absolutely.
Hey, Les. You're calling in to adjourn the meeting. Okay. All right. All right. Sounds good. Thanks. All right. Bye.
Okay. Greg, you got.
Well, I really feel under pressure now. Hanging on the phone to adjourn the meeting, but I had a couple of questions. First of all, can you comment on how closure of the Trenton Channel Bridge has impacted our cost of doing business in other areas? Has this affected any of our other costs or our vendors, or whether it's the refuse contract or?
I can. I'll give you some rough figures off the top of my head. One of the figures is the removal of sludge at our sewage plant.
Yes, sir.
We used to spend about $70,000 a year to haul the sludge with big trucks. Okay, and so when the first closure, or when the weight limits were first put on, Craig, we couldn't use that process anymore. We had to run half loaded trucks. So our cost, and these are rough figures, but our cost went from about that 70 to 120,000 in that vicinity. And I'm going back 3 or 4 years.
Gotcha.
At any rate, then the state came along on the sledge hauling and said you can no longer distribute it on farm fields, which was a very acceptable practice. So then our cost went up to, because of that, that's not just the bridge there, went up to 200,000. But I want to tell you, because Derek here last year, we went and bid that. One of the items tonight was to extend the contract. So we got 3 bids to handle our sludge last year. 2 of them were $250,000, and one of them was $88,000. And it was based on, now get this, it was based on man hours. The bids were taken based on man hours and number of days to remove the sludge and haul it off the island. We took a gamble. Derek took a gamble based on calling around in Ohio about this gullet company. And we thought, even if they're off on the number of days, because their days seemed low, let's say it was 18 or 21 days. Bottom line, their bid was $88,000 based on the number of days, with the caveat that if the days went over, they could go over. And it was a little over $100,000 is what we spent, based on 2 other bids of $250,000. You get that? So we saved almost $140,000 from what we were doing based on two things. The minor cost was the bridge. The bigger cost was not being able to, we had to take it to a landfill now. So that's one issue. When we bid the refuse contract a year ago, we went to priority waste. We got 4 bids. Waste Management's bid was well over $1 million. And this other company bid was $1 million. The 2 companies we interviewed after the bids were taken, one was Priority, and their cost went up about 40,000 of what we had been paying Waste. And at any rate, we awarded it to the low bidder, which was Priority. We took a chance on it. They're doing a good job. But what we decided when we were bidding it, the bridge was going to be closed. You might have missed this part of the meeting. Derek explained that we made the decision that we weren't going to get, let's say, I got to use the right terminology, horsed around by the bidders. They're not knowing what the charges would be at the bridge. So we said when we bid it, we'll eat the bridge costs because we didn't want them to inflate the bridge costs. And what we've got in the budget now is how much, Derek?
About 27,000.
27,000 of bridge costs to haul the garbage trucks off the island. That answers your question, I think, right?
Well, that's certainly one. And the second part of this question, I guess, is because I still haven't seen the prospective contract, and Derek, maybe you have seen it with Brennan. Is the understanding that the repairs to the piers, the 6 piers that are going to be addressed, will those restore the load ratings of that bridge to its original status? Or are we going to be dealing with a reduced, with load restrictions on the bridge as repaired?
That's been a consistent question that we've been asking in our weekly bridge meetings. As recently as I think probably 2 weeks ago, I don't think that they were prepared to answer that question. So we don't, to answer your question, we don't know what the load limits are going to be after the bridge reopens. And one of the ways that impacts our decisions on some things that we do, we had a couple of different options within the water main project that we just recommended to the township board to award tonight with regards to starting the work after that bridge reopened. And the premium differential, the savings that were going to be extended to us were not that significant. And I think part of that was we didn't really have an exact date when it was going to reopen at that point when we bid it. But also, I don't think the contractors knew what the load limits were going to be once that bridge reopened. And there was the possibility that they would continue to need to use the tolled bridge with the heavier limits even after the free bridge was open. So, you know, to Bill's point, there's a cost component, but there's also a service level component. You know, it impacts everything that we do being restricted to one bridge, whether it's trash day logistics. I mean, there's situations and times when, because the trash trucks, they need to go to the landfill at noon. Sometimes when they come back onto the island, there's occurrences where they can't pick up the rest of the island before the landfill closes. So we have trash pickups that might spill into a Wednesday because they couldn't get them all done on a Monday or a Tuesday. So, I mean, it impacts the residents. It impacts the way that we do business from a cost standpoint, from a logistical standpoint. You know, Bill mentioned sludge hauling. It reduces the options that are provided to us. It even reduces the options that are provided to us when we talk about dust control. You know, we had a product option that we preferred and we enjoyed for multiple years. That vendor had a proprietary product. We couldn't go to another supplier. So the one vendor that provided that product said, we don't want to cross the toll bridge. We are declining to bid on your project.
Okay.
So, I mean, it impacts everything that we do. So we understand the residents' pain. And it impacts the way we do business, and it impacts, I'm sure, all businesses on the island, and we're no different than them. So,
Well,
And Derek, that's an important point because I have to believe Kroger's feels the pinch of their trucks coming across the toll bridge. Man's Lumber, the same thing. And a lot of times, those things are passed through costs to the consumer. So it's not just the taxpayer's cost in bridge tolls or taxation or fees to the township, but it's everything that the taxpayer does out here in some part has been affected by the bridge being closed already for approximately, what, 9 or 10 months?
9 or 10 months. Just to add on to your remarks, John, it either adds on to the cost or it becomes a barrier to the investment, to making the investment on behalf of our residents or business. They just choose to put it off and not make the investment at this time because of those additional costs. And that's unfortunate. I mean, this is a quantifiable cost, a material cost to Rose Hill Township.
Yep.
And I know I brought this up to Bill before. I know that your commission has never been charged with it, but in the long term, and I mentioned it at the board meeting last night, I really feel that we need to have a commission that takes the responsibility, not just for the Trenton Channel Bridge, but for all of our bridges, in staying abreast of what their condition is and being able to advocate and ensure that, and here's a perfect case in point. We were given assurances last year when the bridge was going to reopen.
Yeah.
And Mr. Nadeau, I don't know if you remember that. I certainly do. I mean, I know you were in the midst of the campaign. And at that time, I thought, okay, has the funding been secured from? And yet we were assured. Well, it turns out the funding was never there. Right? And those assurances should not have been given. But we have to find a way to stay on top of this. Rather than just presuming that what we're being told is correct, I guess. I would hope that EPS, that Mr. Nadeau, the board, really look carefully at this. The funding mechanisms are different. And I'm sorry, I didn't plan to go into a soliloquy, but the funding mechanisms are different for the Trent Channel Bridge than they are for the other bridges. And funding for those bridges, I still have not seen whether any of those have been submitted by Wayne County as projects for local bridge funding consideration for the last 5 years, even though they are in trouble.
Yeah.
Just food for thought.
No, you're right, Craig. In fact, the bridge problem for Wayne County is just not the island, but just taking the island. When in 2018, when we went to the voters, I produced a big map, showed all the bridges, and it showed the conditions of them. And I didn't even have the Parkway Bridge on it at that point, but the underpass was closed. And the one out on Park Lane, way out the north end, was closed. And I know that Ferry Road Bridge is not in good shape on Ferry. And I knew that the bridge out here on Mesa Island was in very bad shape.
And
so I put all the bridges on a highlighted map, and I said, with all these bridges and all the problems, you voters think that Wayne County's got to fix our bridges. Number one, they're vital to our survival. But number two, you really think that they're going to pave our roads and fix the bridges too? And of course, we didn't succeed. I guess we'll have to do something someday, but anyway.
Well, we've got to succeed. But I think, taking some level of control of our own destiny is critical as well. And I have spoken over the past 6 months, and longer than that in one case, with Matt Chenoweth, Director of Bridges and Structures. I don't know whether you folks talked to him or not. I'm sure somebody has. Derek, maybe you have. With recently Tracy Lights, who's the manager of the LIP program, the local agency partner program. with Keith Cooper, who's on the Regional Bridge Council, the local Bridge Advisory Board up in Lansing that makes final decisions on funding. And every one of them has said that because there is not enough money to go around, you are shortchanging yourself if you do not understand the processes and do not involve yourself and find a way to advocate for your interests. And we have been solely dependent, I think, upon whatever Wayne County has told us. And I think that's a mistake. It's been a mistake in the past and it will continue. That's my 2 cents. And thank you, gentlemen, for listening to me yapping.
Oh, appreciate your comments. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, see you, Craig. You're all done? All right, now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Les made the motion on the phone. He already did.
All right, you want to support it, John?
I'll support that, yes.
Hearing no other comments, the meeting's adjourned.
All right.
Thank you all.
Good night,
Thank you.
gentlemen.